Well, hello and welcome to the Biz Coach Show, hosted by my Biz Coaches and presented by the TLG Group. Our show is focused on giving entrepreneurs the edge they need to succeed. And your hosts are David Macon, that's me, and Eric Whitmore. Eric, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, David. Thank you.
Awesome. Fantastic. I know you've got a big live event coming up that you're prepping for. So thanks for hopping on and making sure we put another awesome episode out this week. And before we jump into our content for today, we just invite you to subscribe, whether that's to our YouTube channel or on your podcast player of choice. We work really hard to produce awesome episodes every week. We've got great guests, a lot of good information. So we want to make sure that you connect with us there or on social media and don't miss future episodes. Well, Eric, today we are going to be talking about something that I think both of us actually been working with some clients on and has been kind of recent and important to some of the work we've been doing. And I think just in general is an opportunity for a lot of entrepreneurs. And so I thought we'd spend a little bit of time today talking about delegation and automation. And as we kind of think about that, both of those tools are very helpful for small business owners, especially if you're growing rapidly. Those are things that you really need to be thinking about. And as we look at each of these, I think it's important for us to take them kind of one at a time, and then we'll kind of dive into more detail. So as we talk about delegation specifically, Eric, I'm curious, when is it kind of more beneficial to delegate versus automate, or any thoughts on that?
And I'd probably let me separate the two. Let me start with delegation, because in when it comes to delegation, one of the most important things that people have to remember is you can do anything, but you can't do everything. And that's a direct quote by David Allen. But the reality is, you can accomplish anything when you have a team. You have resources available to you, but you can't do everything. And so one of the first things you have to do to be an effective leader, right, not just a business owner, but anybody's in a leadership role, is recognize that you have a team. My wife loves to use the phrase, it takes a village. Whenever she's got a major project, particularly like an event, she does a lot of event presentation, and she'll always say, well, it takes a village. And I'm like, yes, it does. Now, that's great, except if the village doesn't know what they're supposed to do, they're just going to be standing around, and you're going to be super frustrated as the leader of the village that nobody's doing anything. So, and that's part of the issue with delegation. And I know I don't want to take it out of sequence here for you, but the most people don't do a good job of delegating. Consequently, they struggle with when or why or how or whatever the case may be. And then now the key is with automation. Automation can be super valuable and very efficient and productive, and there's a lot of things that you can do that you can automate and really make improve your efficiency dramatically. But you can't do that if you're not clear on your process, right? If you try and automate a process that's not clearly defined, then you're going to struggle with your automations, because they're not going to work the way you intended them to. So my point would be, when it comes to combining the two as a concept, right, you have to make sure that you're clearly defined with what your processes are so that you can effectively delegate. And when your systems are clearly defined and you know exactly what the step-by-step process would be, now you can actually automate.
But
without totally alignment, then you're going to miss the opportunity, and it's not going to be what you want it to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the things I look at with that too is, does kind of the human element enhance the task, or does it detract from it? Right. I think that's one of the
things right.
Is, sometimes, sure, you could automate something, but do you lose that personal touch? Do you lose, some, aspect of quality or value because it's an automation? So I think that's something that people need to think about too, is, and if it doesn't, if the human element maybe adds more risk, that's going to be incorrect, or, they only work 40 hours a week. So what happens on the weekend, right? There's things like that come into play where maybe it detracts from the accomplishment of the task, in which case automation is probably a better candidate.
Absolutely. Yeah. Great point.
So awesome. Okay. Well, what about, just thinking about all the different hats that a small business owner wears and all of the tasks that they're trying to accomplish? How do you go about kind of identifying tasks that you might delegate or automate?
Well, so the first thing I would teach somebody going through a process like this, or I would educate, I guess would be a better way to say it, would be one, what's your time worth, right? I think the most important thing that anybody in a leadership role, anybody who has a team, should be looking very clearly at their time, and more specifically, what's their time worth. So, for instance, if I make $100,000 a year at 2,000 hours, my time is worth $50 an hour. And now that's a straight line, 100K divided by 2,000 hours, $50 an hour, right? But the reality is I probably only do what I'm really good at. If I've got, I'm in a particular role, I probably only do what I'm really good at, or what my key focus responsibility is, probably about a third of the time. That's generally what statistics show. It could be a little bit less, could be a little bit more, but generally a third. So theoretically, if I'm doing what I'm really good at 1/3 of the time, that really means that the time that I should be focusing on the biggest return on investment, which is a term you're going to hear me talk a lot more about. But the return on investment at that point is I should be getting, my time is worth $150 an hour, right? Reduced into 2,000 hours by 1/3. And now you take that 100,000 divided by that 1/3 of 2,000, and it comes out to $150 an hour. Now, why that's important is if I know that the task that I should be doing for my role within the organization, and let's say as the owner, typically they're one of the primary salespeople. So if I'm the primary salesperson, and I know that I'm generating, or I should be generating $150 an hour, then any other task that I can pay somebody else less than $150 an hour is a task that I should probably look to try and delegate. So that's the first filter that I would encourage people to look through. Now, once you determine that, okay, this is a task that doesn't require $150 an hour, doesn't require the level of experience and knowledge and resources allocated to it, and this is a job that I could absolutely be able to pay somebody who makes $15 to $20 an hour to do that role, then that's a task that should absolutely be delegated. Now, beyond that, then you would look at, what am I really good at? Well, I'm phenomenal. I'm really good at building out spreadsheets. And I actually kind of enjoy it depending on the day and what I've got going on. If I've got the mind space and I can really work, I'm going to build out these elaborate spreadsheets. But the reality is I probably can get somebody else to do that. Whatever it's being built out, I could probably get somebody else to do that in the same amount of time, maybe a little bit more, but would save me hours.
Yeah.
Right. And so consequently, that becomes a challenge in the sense that I need to be able to identify that. And then also I need to be able to identify who's the right person to be delegating to.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think you bring up a good point as you talk about just the numbers of it. As a concept, I want to say it's originally from Peter Drucker, but it's the concept of pushing work down. And so if there's work in your organization that could be done less expensively, you're actually not being a good steward or manager of that business by doing the work yourself, because somebody else could do the same thing at a less expensive rate. So I think there's to your point, kind of the straight line impact of that. But then also I think about like Strengths Finder. So I love, the Strengths Finder books, the assessments, all that good stuff. Anytime you're not working in one of your strengths, you're missing out on kind of that multiplier effect that you get when you're doing what only you can do best. And so again, it's, initially there's the straight line aspect, but then there's the multiplier of when you're working in things that you're uniquely suited, that are in your strength zone. There's a multiplier effect to that you miss out on the less time you're spending in that strength.
Absolutely. It's dead on. And that's a big factor that, to your point, a lot of small business owners don't think like that. That is definitely something, it's a level of understanding and I want to say like competency when it comes to manage time and resources and getting things done through others, that you really typically only learn if you were in a role where somebody taught you that. Right. Whether that was a mentoring process, or you worked for a corporate company where they brought in people that educated you on that, or maybe you just, read a book and did some work on it. Right. But I mean, it's like for me, we didn't have those resources in the company. I was in the companies that I worked in over the years, and I realized, okay, I'm not being as efficient as I should be. How can I be more efficient? So I go read some books and I go, dig into some of this information. And the more that I dig into this information, the more I understand, the more I can actually utilize it in and apply it where it really is going to give me some return. So but what you find in a small business is that most business owners don't have that discipline. They don't have that experience. They didn't gain it because they've been in the business, and consequently they're not using it. And so it's kind of foreign to them in many cases, not always, certainly, but in many cases.
Yeah, good point. And it's funny as you were talking about that. When you talk about the savings, right, of delegation, you're reducing dollars, but when you get to automation, you're now doing things on pennies on the dollar because it's all electronic, cloud based, all that good stuff. So even further, if you can. So yeah, interesting. Well, I guess if delegation and automation are so great, Eric, why do people resist it?
That's a great question, David. I'm not going to tell you the story that I said I might tell.
Smart.
I don't want to get in trouble from somebody, but no. The reality is, the way I see it, there is an inherent belief that most small business owners have, which is if you want it done right, you got to do it yourself. Mm-hmm. Now, remember, and I'm kind of drawing this on, probably 30 years of experience, and for probably the first 5 years of my, career in both the businesses that I owned and or the jobs that I worked at, I was very much of that mindset. It took me quite a handful of years before I actually broke from that mindset, and then part of that was instilled in me and my parents, more specifically my father. Which is where we learn a lot of these things, right? Is from the people that are most influential in our lives, right? And so he had this, if you want it done right, you got to do it yourself mentality. I carried that into my career and recognized that I can appreciate what my dad was trying to teach me with that. At the same time, I don't think he completely understand the value of being able to delegate and having a team to work with and all that fun stuff. Right. But I think that there's one other piece I would add to that, and I really would put on my life coach hat at this point and recognize that in many cases, again, these small business owners are really good, particularly the clients that we target. They're really good at the task that their business does. They're really good at the landscaping, plumbing, air conditioning management, servicing, or whatever you call it. But they're good at those things. And so when you're good at a certain skill or task, that only makes sense, at least lays credence to the fact that I'm going to believe that I'm the only one that can do this. Yeah. So then now, and remember, most of these people started, it's me in a truck running around doing whatever I'm doing, right? Or it's, it's me doing, designing whatever work that I'm designing on the computer. And so if it's me doing the work, it's hard for me to envision that somebody else could do it equally good as me. Yeah. And there again, there's a certain dynamic there that's not, that small business owner's not educated on that. And unless they came from a corporate environment where they learned how to play well with others, engage with other people, where they allow other people to kind of figure out what they're good at and allow them to shine and grow their skill sets. It's an inherent nature to just kind of like, no, I'm the one that's got to do it. And there's a lot to that to be said in regards to a business owner. It's my business. Yeah. So if somebody's going to screw it up, it's going to be me. Right. And if somebody's going to get it right, it's going to be me. And I'm going to own that responsibility. And so it's really hard for them to let go of that. I mean, that's, like I said, you can go back to the life coach hat. I mean, the reality is it's an embedded nature, right? They own it, which is awesome, except for the fact that that's going to be the thing that actually will undo their ability to grow and scale their business. Yeah, absolutely. Well, that'll be the primary limiting factor at that point. Yeah, and I think a lot of times what I run into is there's such a focus on the short-term impact of delegation, which I think, if we're honest, right, there is going to be, a little bit of a loss Absolutely. In quality, right, in that short term, the first couple times they do it. But in the long run, what you get, that trade-off for the short-term loss is long-term bandwidth. And people don't Absolutely. Focus on that side of it. Is like, imagine if you never had to do that thing again, right? And, maybe the first 2 or 3 times, it's not as good as you would have done it. But after that, if it is as good, maybe even sometimes better, because they're bringing in new ideas and their skills, and now you don't have to worry about it, that you have to focus on the long-term play there. Absolutely. Yeah. And I would want to add one other piece. As my career grew, and my opportunities expounded, what I found was, okay, wow, I can leverage this team, not only this team, but now a bigger team, because each time I got a promotion, I have more people responsible for. But how to do that effectively is yet another component, right?
Yeah.
Who are the right people to delegate to, all that kind of stuff too. So, when you're thinking about that process of delegation, when you're thinking about who you're going to delegate to, what you're going to challenge them with, to your point, I have to be willing to accept less than what my desired outcome is, to be able to allow them to grow and develop. And that was part of the conversation I referenced earlier, is that you have to let that other person fail forward to learn. Otherwise, to your point, you can't. They're not. You're going to keep taking it away from them, and you're really doing at that point is duplicating the effort.
Yeah,
which is where most owners, when they get caught in that conundrum, it's because they're like, well, I gave it to him and they messed it up, and I had to go and fix it anyway. And I'm like, now there's one other piece to that, which is what we call seagull management.
Yeah,
that's what, you're familiar with the term, right? The seagull comes in and drops their poop and then flies out, right? And what happens is often, because people don't know how to delegate effectively, they just, do this. Okay, well, I don't know what that looks like, so I'm going to do what I think that is.
Yeah.
But that's not what you want it to be. And so I don't know what the end product's supposed to look like. So you have to take the time to show people that process.
Right. Yeah.
And I think that's the impatience grows, because they're like, well, I'll just do it myself. Well, that's great. But that, like I said before, that's going to be your primary limiting factor.
Yeah, absolutely. And then they get mad when it's not done right, but they didn't really set the parameters. They didn't show them what
exactly.
There's a whole process, which both, you and I could help somebody walk through, and that's why we do coaching, but there is a right way to do it. And I do think, right, sometimes the concern is, especially if your company's growing and people are already kind of maxed, like, I don't want to dump one more thing on so-and-so. You also have to think about it, as you were talking about, Eric, is it's not just, taking work you don't want to do and giving it to somebody else. It's giving them an opportunity to learn a new skill set and take on a new challenge. And so when you position it that way, and genuinely mean it, it feels different to the employee that's taking it on. Especially, hey, I'm freeing you up to go do something else that's more revenue generating or more strategic for our business, then yeah, absolutely, let me do that. So you just, people can shy away from it for that reason too.
Absolutely. Great point.
So, well, I know we kind of already touched on this next one, but any advice, just because delegation can be a little bit tricky, at least to do it effectively, any tips or advice on how to be more effective in the delegation process once you've decided, okay, I hear what these guys are saying, I'm going to start delegating. Where do they start? Right.
Yeah. So the first thing I would say is you need to decide what you can, let me rephrase that, what you're willing to delegate. Right. Because so it is a process, right? So rather than jumping to this primary skill set, let's start on something smaller and easier.
Yeah.
And make sure that you don't mess that up.
Right.
And then we'll progress in the order of importance of the tasks that I assign you. Right. So that's one is what is it I'm willing to delegate, and start with that. Right. And allow you, David, to get better at it, so that I can trust that you'll be able to do it in the time that we expect, in the fashion that I am looking for, with the end result that we all want. Right.
Yeah.
So that's one. The next one is make sure you pick the right people. Don't ask the person who has got ADHD or whatever and bouncing off the walls to sit down and build a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Because it'll never get done. Right.
Right.
Don't ask them to do data entry, because they'll get 4 entries in and then you won't be able to find them at their desk. Right. I mean, it's like, know who the people are to do the task that you're asking them to do.
Yeah.
Communicate clearly. I mean, to your point earlier, you absolutely have to clearly define what's the end goal, right? What is the process that you found to be the best for you? That doesn't mean they have to follow your process, but it's the process that you found the best for you. And what's the timeline that you want it done within?
Yeah.
Or the expected timeline. And if it takes you, let's say, an hour to do this particular task, allow them 2 or 3 hours so that they can, right? And set a clear expectation for yourself, so you don't come to them in an hour and say, why isn't this done yet? Well, I'm still trying to figure it out, right? And then I think probably one of the last things that people tend to forget is the why. Why
Yeah.
are we doing this? Right. Because if I understand the why, I can think through it a little bit more critically. And if I do have a better idea on how I could do this task because I understand what's the end result, what's the intent of the end result, what am I trying to get from this? Now I can actually be a little bit more strategic, knowing my skill set and knowing what I'm comfortable with and how I can actually, get this task done in a certain time frame or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting as I work with a lot of people specifically on kind of simplifying and streamlining their businesses, adding structure, which I have an exciting announcement on in about 2 weeks. So come back for
Oh,
that one.
nice. Well,
But yeah, one of the things that I run into is just making sure that you document your business processes, and a lot of people don't do that. But if you do that as a starting point, even if it's just for that one task, is the next time you do it, document, exactly how you did it, exactly, what were the steps that you took. I personally, when I delegate something, I like to, take photos or, record a video if I'm doing a report or whatever. And then that way, once I delegate it, the steps are in writing. They've got the visual to refer back to see that step. And then they've got the clear expectations of how often does it get done? Who does it go to if it's, something that's being communicated out? And so it's all right there in writing. And that's kind of the beauty of it is once that person gets good at it, they can take those same resources and then teach somebody else, maybe a little bit lower down the chain. And now you got multiple layers and coverage. If that person quits or sick or gets hit by a bug, you've got more people and resources that can do it. So that's one of the things that we help our clients with, but definitely something I'd advise.
Yeah, great point. As you mentioned that, and that's really kind of taking delegation to the next level is redundancy and cross training, right?
Yeah,
because if only
right.
one person knows how to do the books in a business, and that person, gets into a skiing accident and can't work for 3 weeks or a month, what happens to your books for that period of time?
Right. Yeah.
It's and that's a common thing, right? It's typically there's only one person knows how to put all the data entry into the into QuickBooks or whatever it is that you're using. And so that immediately becomes a challenge, right?
Absolutely. So actually that's a good segue to our last 2 points here. I think, as much as I know we're big fans of delegation and have seen it, kind of transform organizations when it's done right, there is an extent of letting it go too far where you actually start to lose control of your business. So maybe we talk about that kind of far extreme of you delegate everything and you're not, micro aware of what's happening. You're not following up, you're not inspecting it. So maybe share a little bit on that if you would.
Yeah, great point. So that's the dumping of the seagull, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah,
David, I don't want to do this, so this is your job now, right?
Yeah.
And again, we're kind of laughing, but the reality is, as much as I see certain owners don't want to delegate, I also see others that are really quick to delegate the wrong things.
Yeah. Right.
For instance, if and I even was caught in this early on with my Biz Coaches. When I first started, I was struggling with who am I? What am I doing? What do I offer? Right.
Yeah.
And so I was struggling with not, I got people interested. My struggle was with selling myself. Right. And I think a lot of people struggle with that early on, particularly in the individual professions, right? When you're selling a particular service, but there's a certain level of, I'm confident in what I can do or whatever. So anyway, what happened was I brought somebody in that I wanted them to be able to sell me. So I'm not trying to sell my own services. The logic was, if I'm the guy, I shouldn't be having to sell my own service, right?
Yeah.
Well, there's a contrary thought to that, which is if you can't sell yourself, how's somebody else going to sell you?
Right.
And, that took me probably, honestly, 6 months. And I backed into my first couple of clients. And then I realized, look, if I can't convince somebody to buy into me, how is somebody else going to do it? And so I had to own that process, and I had tons of experience in sales, but selling myself was a little bit different than selling what I had sold in the past. And so making that right. So anyway, that's one, but I mean, that transpires over into a number of different categories. Again, going to the point where I delegate this, so if an owner delegates their sales process, man, they better make sure that whoever owns that sales process is as good or better than you as the owner, because that's your bread and butter. I mean, you stop bringing in leads, you stop bringing in revenue, and now all of a sudden you're laying people off, you're cutting down the business. And worse yet, there's this angst and anxiety that starts building in you saying, Why didn't you close this? Why didn't you close that? What do you think the knee-jerk assumption of the salesperson is that hears that from the owner? Well, if
Right.
you're so good at it, do it yourself. I mean,
Yeah.
these are very common conversations that take place in some of these scenarios. So,
Yeah.
and that's in sales. You have the same, challenges with managing the books. You have the same challenges with other tasks within the organization. And so all of a sudden you get an owner that, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do that. Well, that's great. But now you've also, and you kind of alluded to it a minute ago, you've also now assigned a responsibility that you've clearly defined something that you don't want to do.
Yeah.
Oh, but David, guess what? You get to do it.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
And if I framed it poorly by saying, David, I want you to do this because I don't want to do it. And I may not use those words, but it's basically I've implied it. And now consequently, you're like, no, thanks. I don't want to do this. Right. And so that spirals out quickly. I mean, we're talking days to weeks, not months and years. I've seen organizations like come to a standstill because they can't transition through that because they dumped too much too quickly, didn't delegate effectively, and consequently now everything is, they don't have any control of anything.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think what came to mind for me as you were talking about that is it's important, right? No matter how big your company gets and how high up you grow, because you're getting more separation as you're delegating things out. You've got to be able to jump back in the trenches from time to time. You've got to,
absolutely.
If you the plumbing business you were talking about, where you were the guy in the truck, sometimes you got to go back in and get in the truck and ride along with the guys and see how it's going, or go to the assembly line floor or go on that sales call and just inspect the process as it gets further away from you, and just make sure what you intended is still what's happening. Because as you get bigger and as you get more removed from that, those different levels create that lack of awareness that can be crippling to a business.
And leads to you making bad decisions.
Right.
One of the things we used to say at our previous employer was, we don't want any unintended consequences.
Right.
Well, an unintended consequences, if you delegated a task or a responsibility to somebody that they're not completely familiar with or comfortable with, they start losing control of a key component of the business. And the unintended consequence is you've removed yourself from the activity. You don't make a conscious effort to go back and inspect it. And now it's spiraled. So, now you've got a 2.5 on Google review or something like that. And nobody, that'll dramatically impact your sales ability, because nobody believes that you actually can do what you say you're going to do, because you've not fulfilled the way you intended it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think and this is really more of a thought, and you may have anything you want to add to it, but I think one of the reasons, people then avoid automation, we've talked about delegation a lot, but a lot of the reasons people avoid automation is it sounds highly technical, like you have to be able to code to do it. And that's not really the case. There's a lot of great software programs you can get very inexpensively and can really start helping that automation process. So any final thoughts on that before we wrap up with some key points and action items?
Yeah. So, and I think I literally on a coaching session right before this call, I was had some clients on, and it was a group session, and I reminded them, I'm like, look, there's different ways that you determine your market dominating position, which is one of these things that we teach walk our clients through that process. And I said, speed or ordering efficiency and things like that are different ways to do that. Well, automation is a direct correlation to speed and ordering efficiency, right? I mean, it's like if you have a website that's highly, what do I want to say? It's simple, intuitive, right? I can completely understand what I need to do. And I use the analogy of when I was a professional kickboxer and I need to get a massage, and I wanted deep tissue. You don't want bruises when you're in the ring getting punched with kicked by somebody. And so you're getting that deep tissue treatment on a regular basis. Well, nothing was more frustrating than texting somebody and saying, "Hey, are you available tomorrow at 2?" No. How about 4? No. And it's like you go back and forth. I mean, and then I forget what I was doing, and then 3 hours later, it's the next day. Now we're talking about Friday next week, right before I get my appointment. Give me an app.
Yeah.
Let me just go into your calendar and find out when you're available, and I'll pick the spot that works for me. Right. That's a prime example of automation. It's basic entry-level AI stuff that people should be using. I know I've used this analogy on the call on the show before, and that's super simple that people can employ. And that's a direct correlation to having a specific process. I know my calendar. These are the days I'm available. I make it available on the app so that people can plug in and schedule their time when it works best for them. And you know what? It improves order efficiency dramatically.
Yeah.
And now and you know what? You can add additional automations over and above that, which remind me of my appointment tomorrow at 2:00. And it reminds me again in the morning or at noon, so I don't forget that I have an appointment at 2:00.
Right.
Yep. And that's automation, like that. That's like taking it to the next level. And that's not even, I mean, you can go even further than that. But the point is we should at least be employing those strategies.
Right.
But you can't do that unless your processes are in place. And that's the piece that we talked about. And that's a form of delegation as well. You're delegating to an automation, right? And to your point, that's part of the concern is, well, what if it doesn't work the way it's supposed to? Test it.
Yeah, right.
Test it a handful of times, make sure it's working, and you're good. But I mean, to your point, there's a lot of good software out there that you can employ. It's super cost effective, and it makes it so much more efficient. I mean, even if you had an assistant,
right,
that's taking your appointments for you, they still have to look at their calendar, or look at your calendar, find out when you're available, and then they have to look at their calendar and find it. Just make it real simple. Just put it there. I can do it at 2:00 in the morning if that's what I want to do.
Right.
And I can find out when I can get my appointment tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Yeah. Not technical, very affordable, easy to start. So the sooner you start, the better, your business is going to run more efficient and more effective.
And when clients tell me, oh yeah, but my clients aren't familiar with that, and they won't adapt to that. People adapt.
Yeah.
I think I made this reference before. One of my clients in LA, the law firm, just had a follow-up conversation with them. So a year ago, I started working with them, maybe not quite a year ago. Yeah, about a year ago. And we were talking about, and they were there. It's a law firm that does immigration law. So there's a bit of a language barrier, right? That predominantly it's number of different nationalities and things like that. But a lot of them are bilingual, and sometimes they're not necessarily bilingual. They're lingual in their native language and not necessarily good at the English language. And so they're slow to adapt technology. At least that's what I was told. And I'm like, I will bet you if you explain it to them one time, they'll figure it out. They figure out how to pay their bills electronically. They figure out how to pay their car payments electronically, their mortgage payments electronically. They'll figure out how to pay their law bill electronically.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, fast forward a year later, the vast majority of their clients are all making payments electronically.
Yeah.
Resolve a huge major time issue with somebody making literally having to follow up with people, taking phone call, credit card transactions over the phone, all the stuff that you never want to be doing that. Right.
Yeah.
So, and it's just as simple. It's take the time, understand the process, introduce the process, educate the client, and it'll work itself out. There'll be a little bit of time in the beginning, but a little bit of pain point in the beginning, to your point earlier about delegation, but eventually it'll pay off huge dividends later on.
Yeah. And it probably helped their cash flow too.
Totally. Significantly, as a matter of fact.
Nice. Okay. Well, let's review a couple key points and action items. So the main thing here is practice effective delegation, keyword there, effective, to focus on what you do best as the business owner. Use delegation to develop the skills of your employees. Use technology to automate repetitive tasks. Maximize productivity through delegation and automation, and avoid common pitfalls that come with delegation and automation that we reviewed today. So action items, just start by creating a list of tasks that you could possibly delegate or automate. You don't have to decide, but at least just start creating a very basic list. Then add the time you spend on each of those tasks, whether it's daily, weekly, monthly, put that next to each item so you can kind of start to assess which are the most time intensive tasks and start to think about who in your organization might be a fit to take those tasks on. And maybe you don't have somebody today, but you can start thinking about that as you're hiring people, as you're growing your team, or maybe it's a candidate for automation. And then one of the main things that you want to look for is as you have those tasks that you've got A for automate next to, think about, is there a single software platform that would allow you to do multiple automations, right? What you don't want is 5 different automation softwares that don't talk to each other. Then you're almost more of a difficult situation than you started with. But see if you can get, if there's 15 and you can do 10 of them in one platform, then that's something you should definitely consider. So those are some things that you can do to get started right now today. Eric, as we wrap up, any final thoughts? You got a big event this weekend. Anything you want to spotlight?
Yeah, I appreciate that, David. We're super excited. This is a huge undertaking, and I'm at the finish line. It's I don't know, less than 24 hours away. So like anything like this, any kind of undertaking like this, has been a few trip ups and opportunities to improve on the process for next time. So we're even looking at our own process for pulling this together and how could we have done it better, differently, whatever. But appreciate it. Super. This is the piece that we've really been trying to do. I've actually tried to do this for 2 years now, and the COVID piece and everything else. So the opportunity to get in front of clients, show them what we really do on a larger scale, really have the time, multiple hours to engage, bring in all these top people in what their fields and what they do, and expose our clients to that kind of level of insight and understanding in that capacity, or that component of the business, that level of understanding and insight that they can provide to our clients above what we would encourage them or educate them on. Something we haven't done. So like I said, this is a huge undertaking, but it's certainly worth it. And excited to let people know that we've, this one will be about in the books within a couple of days. And we're already planning our next event for the end of October, beginning of November. So
awesome. Yeah, well, more details as we get closer on that. But just hope it's an awesome event. Hope everything goes smoothly. And for those that maybe listen to the show, watch the show, and are going to be there, be sure to say hi to Eric. And we actually have a few folks that have been guests on previous episodes are going to be there too. So be sure to tell them, hey, I saw you, I loved your episode. And I'm sure they get a kick out of that too. So, but good luck, Eric. Hope everything goes well.
Thanks so much, David. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for watching and listening. Be sure to subscribe, and we'll catch you on the next episode of the Biz Coach Show. See you, Eric.
Hey, David.
Bye.